Hello, so today I'm going to be showing you how I've installed my Fibaro Dimmer 2 ZWave dimmer switch into existing two-way UK lighting circuit in my house. So I've installed a few of these already, and I thought it would be helpful to show a video of how I've done this. I found that there's very few guys who have to do this in the UK actually on YouTube. So the first thing to say is that please make sure you understand your electrical system completely before carrying out any works. Read the instructions with the dimmer switch and just make sure you know what you're doing. If you're not sure, contact an electrician and get them to come and do the work for you. I can't be held responsible for any damage to yourself or your electrics, as per also following my video. So laid out on the desk in front of me, I have all the components I think I will need for this installation. I've got a 47mm back box, and this isn't always needed, but it makes life a lot easier if you can get one. This is about 70p from Screwfix, straightforward to install, and that's because my standard lighting back boxes in my house are around 25-30mm, and it's a very tight fit to get the dimmer switch in alongside the light switch, so a bigger box makes life a lot easier. Next up, I have a retractive light switch. This is by Schneider Electrics, again from Screwfix, about £2.50. It's a one gang two-way switch, although in this case we'll use just a straightforward one-way operation. The key here is that the switch retracts back after being pressed. Now it's kind of an optional purchase, but it does make life a lot easier when you're programming and linking your controller at a later date, so I strongly recommend one of these or something very similar. We then have the Fibaro Dimmer itself. This is version 2. Important to make sure that you have a version 2 and what follow on this video, as version 1 and version 2 are quite different. Different pinouts, different wirings, so straightforward, we'll come back to that later. We then have a few link wires, so I have a small loop wire left with the blue sheath on, and two around about 2-inch bits of a wire as well. Now, it's a standard lighting wire taken from a reel like this, about 50p from Wilkinsons. We then have a couple of bits of electrical tape, choose some marking up later on, make it easy to identify what your switch live is versus your always live, and then a few general tools, pliers, screwdrivers, etc. to get things going. Okay, so the switch itself we'll be replacing is a standard light switch in the UK, usual on off, nothing special about this. So let's get started. First thing to do, make sure you turn the power off at the fuse box or your consumer unit. Make sure everything's safe and no live wires before starting. Okay, so here's my switch when undone and taken away from the faceplate. So just for out of interest so you can see before we get started. Standard light switch. And at the top here our COM, and which is always live, and then our switch live at the back here, which has a little brown sheath on the side of it. And my lighting circuit actually does have neutral and earth inside. We're not using those for today's video, I'll stick with a two-way setup. So I'll now proceed to take out the back box, take the switch off, and go from there. Now just before I do, I suppose, I'm going to label up each of these wires just to make it easier, so I don't forget it later on. So I'll cover these with a bit of red tape, a bit of black tape on the switch live. I'd always recommend doing something like this just in case you get confused later date. Okay, so I've taken out the old back box, and just quickly to show you the difference here, you on the left and the old one on the right. So that extra space there is pretty much the same depth as the Fibaro Dimmer, so it should make life a lot easier. Now, removing these back boxes can be quite tricky. Each one's a little bit different, but persevere and I'm sure you'll get it out. Okay, so now that the wall sockets is all prepared, let's get the dimmer switch itself ready and hook it into the light switch. So in front of me are the instructions that come with the dimmer, which are quite clear and quite straightforward to follow. We're following this diagram on the left here because we're doing a two-way setup. So in this configuration, on the dimmer itself, we have L here, which is your always light, that'll come from the wall socket. S1 on here will go to S1 on the switch itself, so I'll show you that here. That's one way on this particular switch. We then have the SX, so the brown wire here will connect to the COM on the switch, the equivalent to what used to be the Always Live. We're then tying together the SX and the neutral on the dimmer via that little jumper switch there that I made. And then this bit here on the end with the line, arrow with the line going through it, that's going out to your light fitting itself. So that's where the old S1 wire would have been. Okay, so I'll get these wired up together now and be back shortly. So just to finish off that part of the video, I have the dimmer fitted onto the back of the light switch. We have the neutral going to the SX on the dimmer. We have SX going to the COM or common or always live. We have the one way going to S1. Now that one way on my switch, but it could be S1, it could be switch 1, it varies depending on the switch. We'll then connect the live on the right hand side of the dimmer here, and on the standard light fitting output, so on the left hand side next to the blue wire. So let's go and get this wired in. We now have the switch wired into the dimmer wired into the mains, and there's quite a nice space just here where the dimmer switch itself is going to go. You've got to be very careful not to get it tangled up. Make sure there's no shorts, there's no wake of contact on any of the bare wires. But it should be fairly straightforward if you bought the bigger back box as I recommended earlier. So I'll now get this all pushed back in, screwed up tight, and we'll turn the power on and give it a test. Okay, so the power is now back on. You can see my light fitting is there. It's just going through its standard power cycle test. So when you first wire these switches in, they go through an auto calibration test. So you'll see your lights pulsate up, and down, getting brighter and brighter and dimmer. And that's just setting the range of these particular bulbs, checking the load, because they do have a maximum 250 watt. Now these bulbs here are 40 watt halogens at a 6. So just within the tolerance, and it seems absolutely fine. So now it's all wired in and plugged in. Turn the switch on, one press, they come up to full power, another press, and they should turn off. So that's the basics done. The next step is just to pair this to the ZWave controller. Okay, so here's my Domoticz setup at the moment. I just have a few things set up. There's a basic couple of lamp switches, my eye kettle, and the downstairs lights, which are already using one of these dimmers. So to get things set up and paired, go to the setup options, over to hardware, and you can see here the hardware I've got in place. So for these switches, I'm using my RaZberry using OpenZWave USB. Click on setup, shows device is currently connected, a couple of switches, and the dimmer already connected to downstairs in my lounge. Go to node management, include node, and that will sit there, look for the switch. Come to the switch itself, press it 3 times, and you can now see that the dimmer switch has been included as node 5, and from there you can go on to configure as you wish. I'm going to set this up as another light switch. Keep it very simple, give it a name, set it up and go from there, but I'm sure you can work that bit out yourself. So I hope this video has been useful. Please note again that, as I said at the start, this is just how I've gone about the process. Your wiring and light switches may vary, so please make sure you know exactly what you're doing and that you take the advice of a suitably qualified electrician if you feel you need to. I cannot be held responsible for any damage to yourself or your light systems, etc, etc. But thanks for watching my video, hope it's useful, and I'll see you again soon.